Very happy to be here. There are three things that you could say about me. The first thing is I'm Belgian, so yes, waffles, chocolate, beer, nagging about the government, the weather, and income taxes, so I'm not going to talk about that. But the two other things might give some inspiration. Obviously, I'm not able to tell you what the future will bring. Yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, right? But there are two things that help me. And the first thing is, ever since I was little, I am eternally curious. I'm the kind of kid that would read everything, the newspaper. I would take my bicycle, go to the library, take out 6 books, the maximum, get home, read them, get back before the library closed, get 6 more, etc. So you can imagine what kind of kid I was. And I'm a tech optimist, at least I try to be. It's not always easy. But let me tell you why I fell in love with the internet the first time, 25 years ago, by accident, really, is that all of a sudden there was this enormous database of know-how. You no longer had to take your bicycle and go to the library. You could just type in anything and you would get this information. That's what kind of sucked me in 25, 20 years ago. And it was magic, right? And it still is. So you're probably wondering what that weird thing is on my slide. Does anyone know what the name of this animal is? The tardigrade, yes, the tardigrade. They're amazing. So they're very small animals. You need a microscope to see them. They are called water bears because they live in water, in your backyard, actually. And they're incredibly tough. They look completely unique, but they are also very, very badass. A Japanese scientist froze them for 30 years and then thawed them again, and they would just wake up and go on with their business like no big deal. And it's the gift that keeps on giving, really, the internet, because the information about tardigrades just keeps on coming. Someone discovered that by accident there were some tardigrades sticking to a rocket when it was shot into space. When it came back, they found out that these space bears, as they are sometimes also called for this reason, were still alive. So and 3 days ago, true story, 3 days ago, I read an article about someone who did research about how do they procreate. And he found out that well, you have to look it up. I mean, add this to your Google history. Tardigrade sex. The male curls his body around the head of the you have to look it up, really. And last thing I'm going to say about them, they have sex for a full hour, and there are multiple orgasms. So I propose to call them sex bears from now on. Without the internet, I would have never known about the tardigrades. So that's what I love about the internet. And there are so many interesting things going on right now. To me, it is magical again. Google has these neural networks, algorithms that process a lot of information. And what's so fascinating is that this artificial intelligence has learned how to dream. They dream. So when this deep dream, when it looks at a picture of a plate, it'll start to improvise. And then it's very funny. Very often there are puppies and a lot of eyes. And when it sees it has a certain thing for that. Or artificial intelligence can study what makes a good Beatles song and make one. That actually happened 2 weeks ago. So it's a wonderful world that we live in these days. So that's when it's easy to be a tech optimist and to be in love with the internet. One last thing of the nice bits. This is a close-up of a cat's tongue. And it's been 3D printed. They're thinking about what they're going to do with it. And I'm a big Star Trek fan. So it's like the Beatles, Rolling Stones, is Star Trek and Star Wars. You're never the two. I am a Star Trek fan. And I have this thing called the replicator. It looks like a microwave oven. And you can just walk up to it and say, tea, Earl Grey, hot, zoom, and there it is. And you don't have to wash up, just put the empty cup back in there and shoosh, there it goes. So 3D printing, very exciting. A cat's tongue. So they're now thinking, could we maybe make a brush out of it? I have a cat at home, and I love it. She does it like twice a year when she just comes up to me and then licks my face. That's amazing. Now, I would buy this brush. I wouldn't be emotionally dependent on my cat because, you know, cats can be really assholes. They never give you love when you need it. And if I have this 3D printed brush, she can, you know, I don't need her anymore. So speaking of Star Trek, there's so many interesting things going on right now, and you have the feeling that science fiction is finally coming true. This is a scene, the mall scene, from the famous movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, that's right. He's walking in a mall. And I hope yeah, that's what I do. I give away the ending of movies, so I'm going to do it right now. He is being identified through his iris, and he's got someone else's eye in his socket. So when he walks through the mall, he's being identified by the shops through his iris, and then the advertising is customized for him. So there's an advertising for a Lexus car, for Guinness beer, hello, come in, it's happy hour. And you might think science fiction, no, it's already true. It's already true. It's not the eye that we need, it's our smartphone in our pocket. When you walk through a mall, this is technically the future is already here. It's just not, as one famous person once said, it's just not evenly distributed yet. And yet, it's dangerous to use the language of science fiction to talk about what is going on in our world right now. I'll not mention that I'm obsessed with social media. I wrote 2 books about it, and I think it learned me that the internet and digital technology also has some dark sides, and it also creates problems that weren't there before. And 3 problems I'm picking out for you: identity, context, and the tension between public and private space. Identity is really, really important. It's so important, actually, that the World Bank is currently running a program called ID4D, ID for Development. There are still 1.5 billion people without an ID. And this is important because for things like healthcare, access to healthcare, you need to identify yourself. So it is that important to be able to identify yourself whenever that's needed. Now, this is a quote from a website called sovereign.org. It'll come back later in my talk. But what they say is that the internet was not made for what we're using it for. It started up as 2 computers being connected, and that's actually my first internet-like experience was in the library of the university, where you could look up the database of another university without having to take a train, right? So that's in Belgium. So, so the internet is not made for what we're using it for. We're using it to send around information, okay. We're using it to talk, to communicate, to flirt, to do nasty things to each other. We're using it for video. That's really stretching the technology. It's a very, very fragile technology. We don't realize it. But it takes only a few things that you have to take out, and no one's having any internet whatsoever. So identity is a problem. You have an online identity, but who owns it? Who owns it? Your online identity is made up of the digital breadcrumbs that you leave behind when you go online, like your browser history, for example, or when you log in with Google, your identity, your Facebook, or your Facebook identity, it will follow you around on the internet. There are cookies that are being stored on your device that make it easy for websites to identify you as the same person who just visited a particular e-commerce website, which is when you try to buy something on a website like Zalando, I'm not sure, or Amazon, and you decide not to buy the dress, you will see that this particular dress, but in different colors, will just follow you around for weeks on the internet, and that's weird. I mean, log in with, there was a couple of years ago, there was this identity war between the big players on the internet, Google and Facebook, also LinkedIn a little bit, and then Twitter, who clearly lost the battle. And a couple of weeks ago, I came across this. You may know Snapchat or not. It is for the younger demographics, and pardon my French, but it's 85% dick pics on Snapchat, because, sorry to bring it to you, but the promise of Snapchat is that it's a self-destructing message. It is not, obviously. There are also apps that can help you to save, not a dick pic, obviously, but there are also girls on Snapchat. Anyway, why would anyone want to log in with that identity? It's not a fair example. It was for a different app called Bitmoji, where you can use emojis to talk to each other. But you see my point. Your online identity is not yours. It is being built up without your knowledge, without your permission. And yet it is just as important, your online identity, as your real life identity. So that's one problem. The second problem is context, fake news. It's not new. I mean, this is from 1943. But it's become easier to create it, and it's become easier to distribute it, because there's this, we're all addicted to speed and to attention, so you want to, spread this message without even reading the article in case. Another example is sometimes it gets too good. The context, there are some companies like Google and their product Google Now, very good at context. From your Gmail messages and the other stuff that you've been doing, they somehow seem to know what you're going to do that day. It's creepy, Sometimes they say, yeah, you might want to leave right now because traffic is dense and you have an appointment. And it really does that. I mean, that's uncanny. And public and private this is a Viking longhouse. I visited it. It's in Reykjavik, in Iceland, in the middle of the city. And 20 people lived in this longhouse, and you can see how they live. There are little movies. And then it struck me, privacy is very recent. Up until 100, 150 years ago, everyone was living together. Even when you were having sex or everything, there was always someone watching. For example, your parents or your children were watching. But this has changed, and I think that what happened to Edward Snowden was one of the biggest events of the past 10 years. It made us realize how vulnerable and how important online privacy is. And the thing that makes me angry is that people will come up to me and they say, they can know, I have nothing to hide. They can know everything about me. That's not true. There are always layers of your identity and of your privacy. For example, your religious belief or your sexual preferences is not something you want to share with someone who's there on the other side of the counter deciding whether you can have a bank loan or not. There are algorithms in banks that have determined, they've seen patterns that if your friends don't pay their bills, you probably will not either, and you don't get that loan. And you don't know why, they don't tell you. Edward Snowden is interesting because he was using a super secret email service, not Gmail, something called LavaBit. And then the government can just force LavaBit to come up with these emails. The CEO of LavaBit refused and preferred to destroy his company instead of doing that. And they forced him anyway. And then this is brilliant. They wanted it in print. So he took the smallest font, 6, and the tightest way to print it. And he printed everything so tight that it was like one big black blur, and they gave that to the government. So nothing is safe. If it's digital, it can be copied, it can be taken away. Someone can demand to ask for it. This is from a website called Perpetual Lineup. There are so many cameras, as David #2 mentioned, so many cameras over there. A lot of people have this facial recognition software with them, linked to people's names. And this is an example from the US. At any given time, when you're going in a public space, you're being filmed, your face is being recognized. And there's even been a case of a guy who was arrested because he looked exactly like a criminal that was on the run. That is creepy. So usually we say, okay, this is, who has to solve this? And typically, there are 3 parties that everyone is looking at. It's the educational system, the media, and the government. The educational system, and this is Dutch actually on the right-hand side, I'll translate it in a minute. In Belgium and the Netherlands, there are programs to enhance media literacy with children. I think it's very important and we should do more. Media literacy for a 6-year-old is different as for a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old, 20-year-old. They need to learn different things. And not just social media, and be careful for the boogeyman and don't talk to strangers, but also don't use Snapchats, girls, don't use it, stuff like that. This is, Lucia is famous in the Netherlands. It's subversive posters, and they pop up everywhere. And this one says, I will think before I post anything stupid. And that's what we need to learn our children. Another party that everyone points at is the media. Don't count on the media, they're in trouble. They are in trouble. I mean, it's the slow death of media. There's a few examples, but most of them are having a really hard time to make money. So I don't think they have the bandwidth to solve a problem that is not involving them. One of the ways that you can see that media is getting desperate is when you see things like these. And you always see, usually there's a big-breasted lady wearing very few textile on her body in there, but I tried to be nice. I didn't know who would be in the audience. This is not made by the media website. It's just a service that they use. And this proves to me that they're desperate. And then the government should sue Google, all the bad companies, you know. That's hard because the government is local and the internet is global, so they're not going to ask us. The UK government last week approved a bill where the snooping bill, where if someone would, the government would want to, they could look into your browser history. That's a scary thought. So no, it's up to you. It's not up to these three. And there are three things that I want you to change. First of all, don't be a little brother. What is a little brother? It's not Big Brother, it's you. It's someone with a smartphone. This guy in Singapore is very disappointed. There was someone, he's holding a picture, and there are many versions of that picture, of another guy being stuck under a bus. And he says, how is this possible? There were 50 people watching, and nobody came out to help this guy. They were all too busy taking pictures. That's what little brothers are. In July, this woman, I'm not even going to mention her name, she used to be a Playboy model, posted this and said, if you, a 70-year-old lady there taking a shower in the gym in LA, if I can't see this, then you can't either. That's a very mean thing to do. I mean, women judge each other all the time, but please keep it internal dialogue. Don't decide to punish a lady when she is like that, and definitely do not punish her by not respecting her privacy. This is very, very mean thing to do. So don't be a little brother. The second thing is, and I'm getting a little angry, I can feel it, magical thinking. You see it a lot in advertising agencies, another industry in trouble, and they say, yeah, you know, make us a YouTube movie and make it go viral. Let's work with an influential. I mean, stop. Use numbers, solve problems. Don't bullshit. Don't bullshit other people. That's not where the magic is. And then finally, don't use science fiction language to talk about technological inventions. We need to stop talking about, this is Robbie. Robbie the robot from Forbidden Planet in the 50s. The scene doesn't even, it's not even a scene from the movie. He's only carrying the dying doctor because he wanted to save her. He's not carrying a scarcely clad woman. Don't do this to robots. That's not, I mean, that's not what they are for. Robots are there to help us solve problems. These children in schools, we need them to, you know, learn how to be nice to robots and talk to them. This is not the type of robot we need, the sneaky robot, the rogue robot. Stop doing that. So, I'm just going to end with a few more slides about robots. There's a guy in my hometown called Jan de Koster, and he runs a robot school. It's not a school for robots. It's a school for kids. And they learn how to make robots. He learns these kids how to solve problems and then somehow use their hands and actually make something. And he's a really interesting guy because he says, they have a specific style, the robots, as you may see. They look a lot different than the ones from my robot. And he says, you need to make them cute. Kawaii, as I say in Japanese. When they look cute, it's easier to work with them. So they have fluffy hair, they have googly eyes, and that's what they do. Make robots cute. This is uncanny. This is a little chip that can be implanted in your brain. It's called wetware. It makes it easier for you to talk to digital things. To me, that's a bridge too far, but this is what we're going to. Is it cute? Is it creepy? That's the type of life we're living. And then the black mirrors, our smartphones, we're addicted to them. We can't help it. I mean, oh my God, there's someone giving me attention. Maybe not. Oh no, it's my cell phone provider telling me that I'm welcome to the United States. My final slide is this. I fell in love with the internet 20 years ago, and I'm still in love with it. But nowadays, something is coming up that is actually solving all of the problems I mentioned. And it is a global identity, reputation, transaction network with self-managed layers of stuff. In other words, the blockchain. The blockchain is interesting. It has a bit of a bad name, you know, because there's people are using it, the network, to do stuff that can never see the sun. But it's interesting. It's not about the money. It's not about the bitcoins that are being used to pay each other. It's about the fact that it is a network that does not have a central leader. It is built on trust. It is built on people actually passing on things when there is a transaction. And I think that the blockchain will solve the online identity problem, because we will be able to manage our online identity ourselves on the blockchain. And to be honest, I can't wait for the internet to die. Thank you very much.